While the series was mainly about the kids, some of the parents that appeared in Codename Kids Next Door were hilarious counterparts of their children. Whether it be Numbuh 1's fun-loving dad or Numbuh 3's super serious parents, they always seem to clash with their child's personality. That said, there was one parent who wasn't present at all throughout the show. In fact, he only ever officially appeared in a Kids Next Door comic book, which has begged the question, what happened to Numbuh 2's dad and why wasn't he in the show? Hogarth Gilligan Sr., also known as Hoagie Sr., was the father of Numbuh 2 and his little brother Tommy, although he was never actually shown in the series. According to what we know from Codename Kids Next Door, Numbuh 2's father met his mother Betty, and the pair quickly fell in love and got married. After that, they had 2 children together who would grow up to be the characters we met in the show. As I said though, throughout the entire series, Numbuh 2's dad was one of the only parents that fans never got to actually meet. The only time fans caught a glimpse of him was in a Kids Next Door comic named Operation Trike. But even then, his face was obscured by shadows. Now it's important to note that Numbuh 2 has mentioned his father a few times throughout the series, but it's still odd that he is never actually shown on screen. Thankfully, I've been able to come up with a few fan theories that might be able to answer the question that I think all viewers had at one point or another. What happened to Numbuh 2's dad? Sadly, our first theory suggests that Numbuh 2's father wasn't around in the show because he had passed away sometime between his appearance in Operation Trike and the events of the TV series. It's unclear exactly how he would have died, but there's a chance that it had to do with the inventions that he was so prone to create. It's mentioned multiple times throughout the show that Numbuh 2 got his knack for inventing from his father, and if Hoagie Sr. was anything like his son, then he was constantly creating explosive, violent inventions, sometimes just for the sake of it. Actually, we'll talk more about an instance that he did exactly that when we get to the next theory. For now, this theory simply suggests that at some point in Numbuh 2's very young life, his father may have suffered a tragedy that ended his life and took away any chance that he had of watching his children grow up. This would explain why he was only ever mentioned in the show, and why the only time we ever heard his voice, it sounded like Numbuh 2 was hearing it from the sky. In the episode titled Operation Caked 4, fans learned that Numbuh 2's dad was a self-proclaimed champion of the annual Tubathon that occurred throughout the town. It turned out that his dad was simply telling him and his younger brother a couple of lies and that he never actually won any of the races, but he still managed to get the message across that you can win at something without cheating. This was important because of all of the other kids in the Tubathon turned out to be massive cheaters. Not Numbuh 2 though, he stuck to his father's ideals, and at one point during the race, he heard his father's voice speaking to him from the sky. According to this theory, the voice that he heard was actually coming from the afterlife, and Numbuh 2 received advice from his father from beyond the grave. Now, I know what you're asking. Aren't there any less morbid theories about Numbuh 2's dad's disappearance? The answer to that is yes. Another great theory that will explain Hoagie Sr.'s absence from his son's life in the television series could simply be that his parents ended up getting a divorce after he created a toy that almost caused a ton of damage to the town and their family. Though there wasn't really a strict timeline in place for the show, it's commonly believed that Codename Kids Next Door was set in the mid-2000s because that was when the show was airing. After doing some research, it seems that around that time, the average divorce rate was about 1.9 out of every 100 couples. Even though that's not the highest number, that means that in a neighborhood with 100 families, there's a good chance that at least one of those families would wind up with divorced parents. According to this theory, in Sector V's neighborhood, Numbuh 2 happened to be a child of one of those families. But don't worry, this theory doesn't come without supporting evidence. In fact, after reading what happened in the comic Operation Trike, Hoagie Sr. may have given his wife a good reason for wanting a divorce. You see, Operation Trike was a comic book featured in the 3rd issue of the Cartoon Network Action Pack, which was published by DC Comics. It acted as a prequel comic to the Season 6 episode of the show, Operation Tricycle. The comic is actually the only material from the Kids Next Door that contains any images of Numbuh 2's dad, only his face is always covered. In Operation Trike, it's Numbuh 2's birthday, and his dad got him a new tricycle. Or rather, he made him a new tricycle. Right away, you can see where Numbuh 2 got his engineering skills from, as the trike turned out to be equipped with a whole bunch of gadgets and gizmos, including a nacho cheese shooter. As cool as that is though, it's at this point in the comic book that Numbuh 2's mom said something really interesting. She was clearly upset with her husband as she claimed that he'd promised not to put any of his ridiculous inventions into the bike. This showed that not only was she upset with Hoagie Sr. for breaking a promise, but she also did not approve of what he did with his free time. To refer to his inventions, something that he clearly took pride in, as ridiculous, shows how much she disliked them. It turned out that she was right to be wary though, because as cool as Numbuh 2's bike was, it ended up becoming dangerous. You see, after spending the rest of his day getting made fun of for his bike because it was a trike, Numbuh 2 was dreaming in his room and had a nightmare about himself running over his friends and enemies on the trike. Just as he was about to run over Numbuh 4, Hoagie's actual squad mate burst through his bedroom door with tread marks on his face. That's right, even though Numbuh 2 was only dreaming it, the comics showed that the trike had actually been going around town wreaking havoc. Thankfully, the Kids Next Door operative had his angry, villainous grandma to save the day and destroy the bike. After throwing the bike away, the comics showed Numbuh 2's dad apologizing to him about the invention that caused so many problems, and the pair discussed making a new bike. Interestingly enough, that was the last time any fan had seen Hoagie Sr. aside from his voice or him being referenced in the show. He seemed to disappear after that, which is why some fans speculate that Numbuh 2's parents got a divorce. Betty was clearly upset with Hoagie Sr. over his inventions, and there's a good chance that putting their children in harm's way was the last straw. Perhaps she divorced Numbuh 2's father and Hoagie Sr. simply left town. This would explain why he wasn't in the show at all, and why Numbuh 2 held his ideals so close to his heart in the episode Operation Caked 4. He still wanted to feel close to his father. But what if Hoagie Sr.'s disappearance was both simpler, yet more complicated than a divorce at the same time? Another explanation for his sudden disappearance or absence from the show could be that Hoagie Sr. decided to abandon his family out of shame. Now, you might think that the idea of someone's parent in a cartoon feeling so much shame that he outright walked away from his family without so much as saying a word is crazy, but think about it. There might have been a lot for Numbuh 2's father to feel ashamed of. For starters, it's been noted by the creators of the show that Hoagie Sr. had some sort of connection to father. Even though we don't know what that connection is, when you look at how some of the other parents have been involved with the Kids Next Door in the past, it seems safe to speculate that their connection was strong. This could potentially mean that Numbuh 2's dad might have been working for the villainous adults behind the scenes the entire time. We learned in the series finale, Operation Interviews, that Numbuh 1's parents used to be members of the Kids Next Door when they were younger, which means that there's a chance that Numbuh 2's parents were also. Well, according to this theory, Hoagie Sr. was a Kids Next Door operative who went rogue and began working for father as he got closer to becoming a teenager. This would explain where a lot of the inventions that the villains used throughout the series came from. Hoagie Sr. was a phenomenal inventor, so it wouldn't be too surprising to find out that he held the same role that his son held in the Kids Next Door, only in his case, it was creating gadgets for the villains. That said, there's a good chance that if this theory's true, Numbuh 2's dad would have conflicting feelings about helping the villains who are actively fighting his kid. This is why, according to this theory, Numbuh 2's dad eventually left his family feeling shame for all of the damage that he had caused. This would also explain how the tricycle that he designed for Numbuh 2 turned evil in the comic book. There's a chance that as Hoagie Sr. continued to create weapons for the adults, he forgot how to make an invention that wasn't inherently used for evil. Again, this is why this theory suggests that Hoagie Sr. wasn't around in the show, because he had abandoned his family. Now, you have to remember that these are all just theories, and none of them can be proven as canon unless the creator reveals one of them to be true. I'm curious to know what you think about it though. Why did they never show Numbuh 2's dad in the show, and how would it explain his frequent absences from his family's life? Be sure to let me know in the comments below.